In this video, I am going to share with you the best electronic vaping solution that will vaporize an entire dose of DMT in less than 10 seconds, allowing you to get a breakthrough experience in one hit, every single time. Sound interesting? Well, let's take a deep dive into the e-mesh. One of the earliest videos I did on this channel was about how to get a breakthrough experience using a simple $3 oil burner pipe. And it was primarily aimed at people who were new to DMT and looking to test the water without investing in some expensive gadget. I still have that exact same pipe, and I stand by that video as the best method to dip your toe into the psychedelic water. So if you're looking for more of a beginner's guide, then go and check that out. This video though is pretty much the opposite of that, because if you're anything like me, then when you start getting into something, then after a while you want to pimp that shit and you want to get the best possible experience by optimizing every variable to make it faster, smoother and more efficient. And that's what we have here. This is a modified e-vape solution, which is commonly referred to as the e-mesh. This is not something that I personally invented. I became aware of it through a friend of mine who made their own video about it, and he in turn picked up the information from DMT Nexus, which is an awesome site full of useful information. So I'll leave some links below to those videos, but I'm going to try and summarize everything here. So let's start with, what is an e-mesh? When it comes to electronic vaping, there are various different solutions, and I think most of us will have seen some of the variations of the nicotine vape pens that most people use. And this involves a liquid being heated to produce vapor, which then raises the question, could such a device be used for those of us who like to vape something with a little bit of a more kick to it? In terms of these particular vape pen devices, the answer is pretty much a resounding no. They just aren't up to the job for a variety of reasons that I cannot be asked going into. But if we move up a few notches into the world of vape mods, then we can find hardware which has enough power and functionality to do what we want. And that's what we have here. A vape mod body, an RDA, the steel mesh surface and a mouthpiece. Stick it all together and you have an e-mesh. And I'll get into all the details of how you put that together later on. So there are several gimmicks to this e-mesh solution which make it ideal for achieving that breakthrough experience in the most efficient manner. As you would expect from any decent electronic vaping device, it's temperature controlled. This means it gets hot enough to completely vaporize the DMT without burning it. And because of this, the e-mesh is more efficient and it uses less DMT to get to that point of a breakthrough because none of it is going to waste. This in turn means you get more value out of your stash, because where before 1 gram might have given you say 20, 50 milligram doses, now you get about 30 doses because you only need 30 to 35 milligrams due to the vaporizing process being so much more efficient. You get the breakthrough in one hit. No more faffing around with 3 hits and worrying about lighter technique, it's just press a button and blast off. This means that you can do this easily on your own, whereas for an oil burner pipe, I recommend having someone to help you do it. I'd still recommend having someone with you as a sitter, common sense, but if you're happy going solo, then this works a treat. And finally, it's a lot smoother to take a hit. Now, there are a few downsides to using this e-mesh solution over an oil burner pipe. Firstly, the cost. An oil burner pipe costs $3. It's readily available anywhere and has been launching people into DMT world since the 1960s. It's not particularly snazzy, but it works. This solution, on the other hand, cost me €100, and depending on where you live, it might cost a little bit more, a little bit less, but either way, it's a bigger upfront cost. Next is that you can't just outright buy one of these. This solution requires 4 different components which you'll have to put together and do a little bit of fiddling to make the thing work. And this can seem like a bit of a steep learning curve at first. It's not that it's particularly hard, it's just a ball ache when all you want to do is start chatting with aliens and instead you're pissing around with the settings on some new gizmo. Okay, so you've heard me waffle on about the pros and cons, But now, let's cut to the fucking chase. Does it actually work? Well, only one way to find out. Yeah, it definitely works. So what is actually going on here? Well, basically, within the RDA, you have a stainless steel mesh platform which heats up to just the right temperature to vaporize DMT without burning it or leaving any residue. I'll show you what this looks like using some completely legal CBD wax. So we can see there is a little patch of waxy substance on the mesh. I'll turn on the heat, and there we go. In a couple of seconds, it's completely vaporized, leaving very little residue and no burnt oily shit. Now, just imagine what that looks like, but with you sucking it in. You get everything that was there in one breath, no waste. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the solution itself and the components that you need to put this thing together. All of this stuff you can easily find online from most e-vape shops, and I'll leave the names of the bits I used in the description below. First up, we have the body of the vape, which houses the battery and temperature controls. And for this, I bought the Geekvape Aegis Solo mod. And make sure that you buy the battery to go with it, because it does not come as standard in the box. Next, we have the bit which converts electricity into heat, and this is called an RDA. The one I used was called a VandyVape M V2 RDA, and this screws on top of the body of the vape mod. Now, once the RDA is in place on the body, we can open it up, just give it a quick pull, and we can see that there's two vertical terminals inside, and it's in these that you'll place the mesh platform that we saw earlier. And that brings us neatly to our third component, SS316L stainless steel mesh. Now at this point you might be thinking, what the fuck, and that it's sounding too much like some kind of construction project. Trust me, it's not a big deal, and again, all of this stuff can be bought in any decent e-vape shop online. Still, it does get a little bit fiddly here, so pay attention. What we have to do is to cut off a 3 centimeter piece of this steel mesh and bend it into this kind of table shape. You want to keep the legs short because you don't want it to hit the ceiling when you put the top of the RDA back on, and you also don't want it to be so long that it touches the side walls either. If it does, then this might prevent it from working properly, so you want it to look something like this. Once you have your shape folded, then you insert each of the legs into one of the slats and turn the screw on the side to clamp it in place. Once both sides are screwed in, you're sorted. Now the hard work is pretty much done and there's just a couple of steps left. When this steel mesh is made, there's usually some residual stuff left on it from the manufacturing process, and so we want to give it a quick blast to burn that stuff off. The way I do this is to put your vape in power mode and give it a quick press on the firing button so that the mesh burns red hot, and then all the residue smokes off. You only need to do this for the first time with a new piece of mesh, and once you've done it, you should set your box to the settings that you'll use for vaping the DMT. Here are the settings I have mine at. TCSS means temperature controlled stainless steel, because we want it to be temperature controlled and we're using stainless steel mesh. The temperature I have it set at is 204 degrees C. What's that in Fahrenheit? I don't know. I'm from England and Our Majesty has decreed that we use Celsius. The only other setting you can really adjust here is the wattage, which I have set at 35. Why? I don't know. I'm no electrician, but it works and it gets you off your tits, and that's good enough for me. Once you have everything set up and the settings dialed in, you are ready to add your substance. And for this example, again, I'm going to use a perfectly legal CBD wax concentrate. So here I am very carefully adding the wax to the mesh, and as I mentioned earlier, this is a bit fiddly. It's best to really take it slow, and as you add each bit, just give the vape a little pulse on the firing button to melt it on. A quick comment here is that you'll need a lot less than what you would normally, because none of it is going to waste. So for example, in an oil burner pipe, I would normally use around 50 milligrams, whereas in this I would use 30 to 35 milligrams. So start small and work your way back up. because if you use this method, the game has changed when it comes to dosages. Okay, so dose loaded, you stick the top back on your RDA, it just pushes on, and then you add the final component, which is the mouthpiece, or DripTip, as they are known in the vaping world, and that just clicks on top. I got this stainless steel one, but you can get glass ones or plastic ones of all different shapes and lengths. Just make sure you order one which fits the RDA connector, which in my case was a 510 type. And that's it. Now you can press the button, inhale for 10 seconds, hold it for as long as you can, and it's hello hyperspace. I've already given the main pros and cons, but after using this for a while, here are a few general observations. The experiences I've had using this method have seemed a little bit shorter than usual. Now that's purely subjective because I haven't strictly timed them, and different factors can come into play. Another factor could be that I'm not going through these kind of 3 stages of tokes like I do with the oil burner, which on its own was dragging the experience out by a minute or so. Likewise, another thing which could be a pro or a con, depending on how you look at it, is that it does happen pretty much instantly, so you don't get to decide 2 tokes is enough. By the time you get the first sign that it's kicked in, you are already well on your way with a full dose inside you, so there ain't no backing out of this. If you wanted to use this outside to trip out in nature, then this solution would be ideal, but only for that first use. And that's because reloading this out in nature would be a nightmare, and because you are stacking wax onto this little boingy exposed platform, then a slight gust of wind or misplaced hand will just send it flying off into the ether. Now granted, a lot of that is also true of the oil burner pipe, but I do think the oil burner would be slightly easier to reload out in the wild. Still, like I said, with this you could easily load it indoors and then carry it anywhere outdoors for a pretty cosmic experience. So, final thoughts. This to me is the perfect balance between cost and performance for someone who's willing to pay for a more effective solution and is willing to put up with the initial effort to get it set up. The total cost of all this for me was €100, which is still no small potatoes, but if you want an electronic vape which does the job in the most efficient way, then this is it. It's smooth, it's efficient, it's affordable, and it's portable. And in my opinion, if you're looking to upgrade your DMT game, this is the way to go. So, with all that said, am I ready to retire my trusty old faithful oil burner pipe? And for the most part, yes, absolutely. I would still say that for an absolute beginner who just wants to test the water, get the oil burner. It's cheap and cheerful, and for $3 you can't really go wrong. You know, I had many friends who tried DMT just once and found it completely overwhelming and have never touched the stuff since. So make sure that this substance actually agrees with you before you fork up $100 for a fancy solution like this. Also, there are some situations where you do want that slower control of doing tokes gradually over time, particularly if you're doing DMT in conjunction with an MAOI, which I'll be covering in a future video. So the oil burner still has a place in the toolbox, but this is now my go-to tool for visiting DMT world. Okay guys, that's it for this video. As always, I hope you found it useful, but if you have any questions, then leave them below. Or for those of you who have tried it, let me know what you think. Is this the future of interdimensional television, or is it just an expensive gimmick? Let me know in the comments below. I have a few shout-outs to give in regards to this video. Firstly, to my awesome friend Minty, who has been a supporter of this channel since the very beginning and who brought this whole e-mesh thing to my attention. He's an absolute legend and he has his own video on the subject which goes into more detail, so check that out at the link below. Also, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons. It's through their generous support of my channel that I was able to take a chance on this solution and try it out. So massive respect to those awesome people. Needless to say that due to my dabblings with this tool, there's going to be an influx of DMT related content incoming, so stay tuned for those, and I will see you guys next time on Adeptus Psychonautica.